This is a virus that we know hits older people particularly hard. It spreads faster in institutional settings like care homes. We put in place very early on risk assessment for people being admitted to care homes. We put in place guidance around isolation of residents within care homes. But we have to continually review what we did as our knowledge of this virus develops. It is very, very easy, and I guess, understandable for those who are not in decision-making positions here, to apply hindsight to all of this and apply knowledge that we have now that we didn't have then.
And what knowledge did you not have at the time that you now do have exactly? Because right from the get-go, it's been common knowledge to even the general public that the two categories of individuals that were most at risk from this virus, if you will, were the elderly and people with underlying health conditions. Your so-called expert guidance that was given to you by the science, or the scientists even, allowed for over 900 people from hospitals to be dumped into care homes without any testing. And I'm not entirely sure how this is managing to go relatively unnoticed, because while the SNP screech about Dominic Cummings and the need for him to resign for breaking lockdown rules, here we have Thin Lips trying to worm her way out or try to justify why they allowed 900 people to go into care homes untested, which, in hindsight, could be responsible for why there's been a so-called crisis in these care homes. And of course, there was no crisis, because a crisis suggests something out with your control. And it was their own governmental advice and guidance that resulted in these people being in these care homes. What hindsight are we talking about here? This is absurd to me, that this woman is going to get away with something like this. This is serious. This is absolutely serious, and disregarding whether or not you believe in the virus narrative or you don't, the reality of the matter is there was a flu epidemic or a virus epidemic going on, and they shoved over 900 people into institutions where the most vulnerable in society currently were, untested.
To these decisions, and yes, we learn as we go, and at all steps though we do what we consider right to protect people from this virus.
So do you believe that sending more than 900 untested hospital patients into care homes may have been a contributory factor?
Well, look, if I apply hindsight to that, I come to a different conclusion, but let me tell you the situation we were faced with at the time. We had, and these older people you're talking about, the so-called delayed discharges, had no medical need to be in hospital. At that point, we were getting ready for what we considered would be a tsunami of coronavirus cases in
Corona. And guess what? That tsunami never came. But yet you're still peddling this narrative that there's a serious issue in society in terms of the severity of this virus. These tsunamis never came. And it's still not justification. You talk about test and trace and isolate, etc, etc. You talk about the need for us all to stay indoors, but yet you shoved 900 people from hospitals that could have been asymptomatic, your own narrative that I'm going by here, into institutions, into buildings with the most vulnerable in society. The two categories of people that we should have been protecting from day dot are still the two categories of people that are suffering the most from this virus, if you will.
To our hospitals, and our hospitals, as it turned out, were under huge pressure.
No, they weren't. They're half empty. Even the one that was built to cope with this supposed tsunami, it's empty.
It would have exposed older people to enormous risk to leave them in hospitals at that point. Now, people say there should have been more testing, and that again is a legitimate question. But again,
you're damn right it is.
And what we knew then about the efficacy of testing of asymptomatic people is different to what we know now. In fact, there's still questions about the reliability of testing there.
But yet you're still pushing ahead with test, trace and isolate.
So what we did was put in place risk assessment, guidance in care homes. At every stage, we have done what we thought was best based on the knowledge that we had at the time. Of course, mistakes will have been made, and we learn as our knowledge of this virus increases. But the suggestion that any of us just acted recklessly or without due care and attention to older people is frankly one that is not true and fundamentally very...
That really is unbelievable that she's going to get away with something like that. If something as trivial as Dominic Cummings driving X amount of miles in his car warrants the screeching from Nicola Sturgeon, and the demands for him to resign. Something as mishandled as the care home controversy should be grounds to resign, should it not? Anyway, another thing to touch on before I go on to the purpose of this video is in Skye, there's a police probe now for 3 deaths at Skye care home. Another article here regarding this. Police investigate deaths at a care home with 56 COVID-19 cases, so-called. And the reason I bring this up is because my mother happens to know somebody on Skye. Now granted, this is anecdotal to a degree, but the word on the street, if you will, in Skye is that these individuals were murdered. And CID from Inverness are going to Skye, and hence the police investigations regarding this matter. Where's Beta Blackford just now? What's Ian Blackford doing just now? You know, the representative for that area of Scotland. What is he doing currently, screeching about Dominic Cummings? Of course he is. So, briefly go through this. 10 residents at Home Farm Care Home in Portreeve died in the outbreak. Police Scotland said they were looking into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of 3 women aged 84, 86 and 88 at the home. The investigation comes after the care inspectorate raised serious concerns about the care offered at the home. The watchdog began legal action to remove owners, HC1, as care providers earlier this month. The care inspectorate brought the action after all but 4 of the home's 34 residents and 29 staff contracted COVID-19. In a statement, Police Scotland said, "We can confirm we are investigating the circumstances of the deaths of 3 women aged 84, 86 and 88 at Home Farm Care Home in Skye. Inquiries are continuing." And of course, there's also an investigation taking place in Dunbartonshire. Reported in the Scottish Mail on Sunday, it comes as Police Scotland also said it was investigating complaints at a home in East Dunbartonshire. The force said complaints had been made regarding Springvale Home. However, the force said the investigation was unrelated to any deaths at the home, was not connected to COVID-19. But the one in Skye, however, there is question marks. So the Rainbow Unicorn Party have unveiled their Test to Protect Essential Explainer on their website, courtesy of Olaf Standel this time round. The same Olaf Standel, as I pointed out last time round, is a socialist, environmentalist, anti-racist, of course, and ironically has in his bio views of my own, or my views are my own. So it says, to chart the path forward in fighting this virus, and to help restore as much normality to life as soon as it's safe, the Scottish Government is launching its Test and Protect system in every one of Scotland's 14 health board areas from Thursday, May the 28th. It will enable the Rainbow Unicorn Government to gradually change the restrictions and suppress the virus, instead of just containing it, allowing our society and economy to avoid a return to lockdown and to adapt to a new normal, which of course involves a lot more than living alongside a virus. It involves completely reshaping and restructuring our society and still claiming it's to adapt to live alongside a virus. It's rather strange. So anyway, Test and Protect is Scotland's public health approach to implementing the test, trace, isolate and support strategy aiming to suppress the spread of COVID-19 in the community. This approach is designed to help us interrupt chains of community transmission by identifying cases of COVID-19, tracing the people who may have become infected by spending time in close contact with them, and then supporting those close contacts to self-isolate so that they're less likely to transmit the virus to others. As part of the Test and Protect strategy, the NHS will also be asking people to self-isolate who do not have symptoms but have been in close contact with someone who has tested positive for the virus. If symptoms of COVID-19, a new cough, fever, or a loss and or change of taste and or smell, you must self-isolate at home for 7 days. If you live with someone who has symptoms or has tested positive, you will be asked to self-isolate at home for 14 days. So if you have symptoms of a summer cold, if you have symptoms of hay fever, you have to self-isolate for 7 days. If you live with someone who has symptoms of a summer cold and or hay fever, you also have to self-isolate for up to 14 days. And this is disregarding whether or not they've even tested positive. And as we've already heard, the efficacy of testing, rather questionable. Everyone who tests positive for COVID-19 will be put in touch with the local contact tracing team so that other close contacts can be identified. These close contacts, as well as household contacts, will be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. How to self-isolate? This will be good. Self-isolation means you should remain at home and you shouldn't go to work. Public areas or use public transport. You shouldn't go out to buy food or other essentials. I love what they determine what's essential and what isn't essential. You must stay at home for the full length of time, 7 or 14 days. That's required. You tell them, Surgeon. You know, I love what they determine what's essential and what's not essential. This is great. They are dictating every aspect of your life and claiming it's to say it's for the benefit of your life, to combat a virus, to suppress this mystery virus. It's it's bordering on tyrannical, if I'm quite honest. While you are self-isolating, you should stay at least 2 meters, 6 feet or 3 steps away from other people in your home. And why, as I said in the last video, is it fine for 1.5 in Germany and the WHO themselves recommend 1 meter? But here we have 2 meters. That's what you must do. 1.9, 2 though, that's fine. Stay in a different room from other people in your home, ensuring it is well ventilated. Sleep alone in a separate bed. Spend as little time as possible in shared areas. Avoid using your kitchen while others are present. Use a separate towel to dry your hands after you wash them. And clean your kitchen, bathroom and other surfaces throughout the house every day. Turn into a clean freak. Digital tools will support contract tracing. We're enhancing and extending the use of software that public health teams already use for contract tracing in relation to other infectious diseases. And how does that work out? Yeah, they have a great job tracking down people that have given each other chlamydia, etc. But you're gonna save the day with your digital tracing tools for coronavirus, are you? And this software has been piloted in Fife, Lanarkshire and the Highlands in recent weeks. At a later point, we will also add a digital platform to allow people who test positive to enter details of their contacts online. This is fucking ridiculous. However, we also recognise that not everyone in Scotland will want or be able to use a web-based tool. And we're ensuring that telephone support is available for everyone who needs it, so you can diagnose them over the phone. We have reached the required testing capacity and we're continuing to build it further. To launch Test to Protect nationally, we needed the ability to conduct over 15,000 tests a day, and the Rainbow Unicorn government has now reached that capacity. It will be delivered through a combination of NHS labs, academic partners, the Rainbow Unicorn National Blood Transfusion Service and the Lighthouse Lab in Glasgow. We're continuing to build higher testing capacity and make it more locally accessible. That's fantastic news. I'm so excited. But get this. This is great. Test and Protect approach will not be effective in suppressing the virus on its own. Instead, it will be used alongside other public health measures to reduce transmission, such as socially distancing, good hand and respiratory hygiene, appropriate use of face coverings, and the surveillance of disease spread. Oh my god. Yes. For all essential advice and health guidance you need, visit the NHS and Farm website and keep up with the recent developments on our dedicated COVID-19 page, you people, man. The Rainbow Unicorn government advice remains to stay at home except for essential purposes, such as essential work that can't be done from home, exercise, we get this though, which can now be done more than once a day. So there's a deadly virus out there, guys, right? It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But it's so serious that you can't go out unless it's deemed essential by Nicola Sturgeon's Rainbow Unicorn team, right? But you can go out and exercise more than once a day now. It's so serious that you couldn't go out and exercise more than once previously, but now you can, but it's still as serious as it was when you could only go out once and exercise. They are just giving you little bits of your freedom back, enough for you to not en masse, or en masse I should say, complain and start to break their rules, destroying their narrative, because realistically the only thing that is keeping this bullshit going is the majority of people buying into this concept. It's not as serious as they make it out to be. This is tyrannical, and the things they are doing under the guise of a new normal to combat the deadly virus are sinister. It's Agenda 21, it's the Sustainable Development Goals, it's their decade of action, which I have talked about consistently in this fucking channel to no avail. Anyway, however, as we keep making further progress, quote unquote, the great progress they're making, care homes ravished by death, and they're making progress. The warm weather's destroying the virus and it's on the cards. So anyway, the government is expected to enter phase 1 of its roadmap to easing the lockdown, and this will go on, and then when the winter comes it's going to come back, because every single symptom that people are supposedly showing that's akin to, or is attributed to coronavirus, it's identical to the flu, it's identical to pneumonia, it's identical to summer colds, it's identical to hay fever. So when the flu comes round in the winter again, we're just going to go back to square one, and this is going to keep going on and on and on and on. And people need to realise that this is what's happening. We are not going back to normal until people understand that this is bullshit. Anyway, it then says, however, as we keep... Test, trace, isolate, support approach is an important public health measure that many countries have or are putting in place to ensure low levels of transmission of the virus in the community and the next is every single thing that one country implements, they're all doing it. It's not unique. They're not conjuring these ideas up at their little round tables. They're identical everywhere. All this tyrannical nonsense is happening everywhere. Anyway, up to now, we have asked people who have symptoms of COVID-19 to self-isolate for 7 days. And the people they live with to self-isolate for 14 days. But you've not made a distinction that there is other things that they could have symptoms of. You are attributing every single symptom somebody comes down with to that of COVID-19. You're attributing every death to COVID-19. This means not leaving the house at all, even to exercise or to get food and medicine. Family, friends and neighbours are able to help many people in this situation, by knocking on the door, leaving something on their doorstep, even though they've touched said product that the individual in the house then has to pick up themselves. I've watched this nonsense even with Royal Mail. It's ridiculous. But yet you can't contract it off a delivery driver when he's delivering your Chinese at night, you see. Strange. It's a very complex virus. In Scotland, we will continue to ask people who have symptoms of the virus and their household members to self-isolate. Well, you've made everybody self-isolate to a degree. The NHS will now be asking people to self-isolate who do not have symptoms but have been in close contact with someone who has been confirmed by testing to have the virus, but under the article I just read previously, or somebody who has symptoms. Self-isolation is different from the physical distancing measures everyone in Scotland has been following. Everyone has been following. I ain't been following them. Fuck you. Everyone has been staying at home if they can. Key workers have continued in their important roles. Key workers. These fucking people, man. Every job is essential to that individual, but you people have diminished these jobs. You've diminished. Anyway, it says here, and others have been able to leave their home for exercise. Or to buy food and get medicine. But it's a deadly virus out there, but they can go get food and medicine. Or for some other essential reason. Some other essential reasons, yeah. If you are self-isolating, you won't be able to do these things. You must stay at home for the whole time. This will be hard for a lot of us when we feel well and can see other people being able to go outside to exercise, but it is vital to the success of Test and Protect to bring down the levels of transmission of the disease, that we follow the instructions that the NHS gives us, and that we stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. How many times are you going to repeat that fucking statement over and over and over and over again? You've admitted yourselves, it's Nicola Sturgeon that is, that they have the capacity for 4 times the amount of people that are currently in hospital, in ICU units, etc. This wave, this tsunami that they spoke of never came. Flattening the curve, being and gone. This is ridiculous. This will be hard for... I've read that, sorry. So then it says, who needs to self-isolate? Everyone who develops symptoms of COVID-19 or summer colds or the flu or hay fever or whatever it may be. I mean, what's next? Whether or not they have been tested should self-isolate for 7 days. So if you come down with the summer, anything, absolutely anything that they have claimed is only attributed to COVID-19, you must stay at home for 7 days. You have to phone your employer up and tell them that you can't come in for 7 fucking days. People who live in the same household as a person with symptoms should then self-isolate for 14 days. If you have symptoms, contact the NHS, yada yada. Everyone who tests positive for COVID-19 will be put in touch with a local contact tracing team. Yeah, but this comes after. You see, so you'll be stuck indoors for how long, and then you get tested. Tests that they don't even know the efficacy of, you know. Great stuff. These close contacts, as well as household contacts, will be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. It will be important that everyone, especially the people identified as close contacts, remain in self-isolation for the full length of time they are asked to. A close contact is someone who's been physically close enough to the confirmed case for a long period of time. Then says, if you've been in close contact with someone who has COVID-19, but how are you going to know? How are you going to know? Because, I mean, how many people are saying they've had it or have it and they've got other things? You'll be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. Of course you will. I mean, they're just repeating themselves over and over. Self-isolation means you should remain at home and shouldn't go to work, school or public areas. You shouldn't go out to buy food or other essentials. Self-isolating will sometimes be difficult for many of us, and not everyone will be able to follow all of the guidance all the time. The 2 most important things for everyone who is self-isolating, to do are stay at home and do not leave the place you live, and follow physical distancing and hygiene advice for coronavirus. Good hygiene advice for coronavirus should always apply. Wash your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds regularly. Or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer if your hands aren't visibly dirty. Catch your coughs or sneezes in a disposable tissue and put them in the bin. Or catch them in the crook of your elbow, not your hand. If you avoid touching your face. Oh, fuck off. While you are self-isolating, try to physically separate yourself from other people in your home as much as you can if they're not self-isolating. If you can stay in a separate room or you need to leave your room, try to stay 2 meters, 6 feet or 3 steps away from other people in the home if they're not self-isolating. Spend as little time as possible in shared areas such as your... Oh, do you know what, man? I mean, this is just ridiculous. They're literally dictating every aspect of your life. Absolutely every aspect. They'll be telling you what to eat next. Make a plan for your household or family. It'll be helpful to plan ahead and think about who you could ask for help to make sure you stay at home and self-isolate successfully. If you are self-isolating for 14 days as a close contact and you live with other people such as your partner, older children or housemates, they may not need to self-isolate and could be able to go out for those things as well. So fucking what? So certain people might not have to self-isolate. I mean, what is this? Pharmacies can often arrange to deliver repeat prescriptions if you run out while you remain at home. Jesus, man. Think about it. If you're planning ahead, actions you can take before you ask to self-isolate include familiarising yourself with information and support available online, talking to your neighbours and family and exchanging phone numbers of household contacts. What? Creating a contact list with phone numbers of neighbours, schools, employers, pharmacists and your GP. Set up online shopping accounts if possible. This is another thing they're trying to roll out. They want everything to go digital. Fourth Industrial Revolution, as they keep referring to, or the new normal. Ensuring adequate supplies of any regular medication and other essentials, but do not over-order. Make a plan for those in your home who are vulnerable. Talking to any children or young people in your household as they may be worried about coronavirus thanks to our propaganda. Oh wow, staying away from work, getting support you need after self-isolating at home. Let's read this one before I go. You should self-isolate at home for the full length of time you've been asked to, told to. Realistically, told to. You can return to your usual activities. Ask you to them after this time if you feel better, and if you have symptoms, you no longer have a high temperature, you must continue to follow advice and rules on physical distancing and staying at home that are in place for everyone in Scotland. What happened to supposedly being immune after you've contracted it? So you have to continue with this bullshit anyway. A cough and or anosmia, loss of or change in sense of smell or taste, which is also attributed to hay fever, identical symptoms to that of hay fever, may persist for several weeks in some people. Even though the coronavirus infection is cleared, you don't need to continue to self-isolate for more than 7 days after your symptoms started if you have a persistent cough and or change in smell or taste with no other symptoms. So you might have hay fever. This is ridiculous. If you develop new coronavirus symptoms at any point after a period of ending a period of isolation, then the same approach on test, trace and isolate support should be followed again. So you need to keep doing this every time you come down with something. There must be a case if you previously tested positive for coronavirus. As this is a new virus, we don't know how much immunity people develop and after an episode of infection, or how long any immunity lasts. This means if you're unwell, you need to be tested and stay home for 7 days from when your symptoms start over and over and over and over again. This is what they're doing. You may be asked by the NHS to self-isolate again if you were once more a close contact or another person who's confirmed case. So again, it's starting to build this consensus that you don't want to be around people because anybody and everyone could give you this virus. You could have to go through this process of self-isolation over and over and over again. This is what this is doing. It is conditioning people or pushing people in a fear-based state to want to stay away from everyone. You're seeing it now anyway. People avoid each other like the plague. In conclusion, test and protect, it's not a quick fix or an easy answer. However, it is a vital role to play alongside other public health measures such as physical distancing and good hygiene, respiratory hygiene and good hand hygiene, to enable us together to maintain. We're all in this together. It's this bullshit. While we're all supposed to be trapped indoors, Nicola Thinlip, she drives about all over the place, video clapping at ridiculous locations. Or we've got Beta Blackford travelling from Skye to London. Yeah. We're all in this together. Yeah. Everyone in Scotland will have a part to play. Yep, and there we go. This is what they're doing. They're roping everybody in. So the onus is on you. The onus is on your neighbours. The onus is on everyone around you. And if you don't comply, then you're the problem. We must all prepare for the possibility of having to self-isolate for 14 days. We must also prepare for having to slip back and regress into lockdown if Nicola Thinlip says so. Power mad, man, I'm telling you. Whether someone we know well or someone we have only spent time with once has been diagnosed with COVID-19, the test, trace, isolate support strategy along with other public health interventions to reduce the risk of transmission is likely to be part of life in Scotland until a vaccine programme has been delivered. Our approach over time to reflect new insights into this disease and learning from experiences in Scotland and around the world. It's likely this will be a part of life until a vaccination programme for COVID-19 has been delivered. That's the point of this. This is to take a vaccine. But these restrictions or this new normal that we're adopting to, this new normal that we are creating, a better, fairer Scotland, etc., that they are creating right now, That will continue after your vaccine. Peace.